So as I said, greetings to everyone. I'm coming in to cover for the person who was meant to take this course. She called in late and said she's feeling unwell. So I just started to take it up to see how I could support with this particular model, because moving it to a different date is going to definitely affect the remaining program that we have, because we'll keep adjusting everyone to the last day. So just bear with me as we run through with our program today. It's going to be more of discussion-based activity other than more of talking. So we're going to make it interactive. So I could ask questions and I need people to respond. If you can turn on your video, it will be much appreciated, other than hiding your face. But if where you are is not convenient for you to turn on your video, we respect your privacy, but just make sure you pay attention, because each and every one of these subheading that we're going to treat, we have some questions that we're going to ask, and we need people to participate. If you cannot speak up, you can always use the chat box to drop your comments. Then I can have a look, and then if I didn't get any feedback from anybody, simply means nobody's following me, and it means all the time I'm spending doesn't worth it. So we might have to stop the presentation. So do well to participate, ask necessary questions that you want, and then I am here to provide answers to them. Right. So for today's program, as we can see from my slide, can you all see my slide?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
So,
I can see.
All right, thank you. So as you can see my slide, today's model, we are treating research methodology, right? This is actually one of the pillars of research, in as much as everybody will tell you that each chapter is very important. But I could tell you that without research methodology, anything you're doing in research is not leading anywhere, right? So during the course of this program, we are going to learn few things, and we are going to explain the following one. We are going to explain the major types of research design and how it is being applied and used during your research process. We distinguish
Boy, sorry, let me interrupt a little bit. Chidinma Ume has already joined, so she will help you with the like coordinating the class. She will help you in the moderating the class. She just joined now. I've been calling her before, but I didn't see her name on the list. But she just joined now. You look at her name is Chidinma Ume on the list. So maybe after your class, she will now take questions and coordinate the rest of the class.
Okay, that's fine. Chidinma, welcome.
Morning. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Oh, it's already afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, you're highly welcome. I think we have met before during the opening presentation, so we are glad to have you on board today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So as I was running through the learning objective of today, I said first, we're going to explain the major types of research design and how each and every one of these research design can be applied during the course of research process. We are going to distinguish between different types of research methods or research method. We are going to talk about research approaches, right? Then we'll equally talk about sampling techniques and justify how each and every one of these sampling techniques can be selected and what they represent. We'll equally go into talking about sources of data. So you can see from here that we have majorly two sources of data, which is primary and secondary. So we are going to enumerate more on what are the major differences about these sources of data and how you can apply them while you're doing your research, and which of them is the best for you to use. So we are going to talk about research ethics, validity, reliability of research instruments. Then we'll talk about questionnaire as a source of data collection, interview guides, and then observation checks. These are instruments that we use to collect data. Then the last but not the least, we talk about data analysis techniques. This is what we use to analyze data that we have already collected from different sources. So these are the few things we're going to discuss today. It might look few, but when we will dive into it, you will see how elaborate they are. So just ride on with me on this journey. If you have questions, Chidinma is here to take your questions and then to call my attention. I will try as much as I can to be fast, in as much as I'm not going to be too fast, not to make it to understand, but I will try to run through the slides. I have 38 slides to run through here. So I'll try as much as I can to make sure I walk through all of them. But at any point in time you get confused, just drop your chat on the chat box and then Chidinma will pick that up and then call my attention. Then I can explain further. So as I said, research methodology is one of the major pillars in a research. I'm going to give you a particular example of what research methodology is all about. For instance, if you have a purpose, you have a destination that you want to go. You just wake up this morning and you said, I want to travel to, let's say you want to go to Cameroon, for instance. What comes into your mind is, how am I going to plan this journey? What means? The means could be transportation. The means could be with who. The means could be anything you're going to take into consideration to make sure you get to your destination is what we consider as research methodology. It is a plan. It is a strategy. It is a standard protocol that must be put in place to drive you to your destination. If you don't have these plans, you cannot be able to get to your destination. So many things could happen to you. You could miss your destination. You could get there in a different route. You could equally get there in a longer allocated time. If the time you're meant to get to your destination is 1 hour, because you took a different or wrong route, you can get there probably in the next 5 hours or 6 hours, or you can even get lost. So research methodology is just like a pillar, a basis upon which your research approach is built on. In as much as we have discussed about the introduction, which is the chapter 1, we talked about finding the research statement problems, identifying the gaps in literatures, and then being able to use that to frame your research question, right? While framing your research question, what guides your approach to answering those fundamental questions that you raise is what we call research methodology. So you can see how significant a research methodology is during your course of research process. If you get it wrong, as I said, you could give a misleading conclusion. You could give a confusing conclusion. You could as well not reach to a valid conclusion. So it becomes very important that you need to understand what research methodology is all about. How do I navigate the hurdles around research methodology? Having a better understanding of research methodology will guide you properly to know what research entails. It will give you a broader picture of how you can frame your research questions. You don't just ask questions because you are able to identify research gaps. You ask questions because the questions you're going to ask is going to suit with the proposed research methodology. But eventually, if you see a research work, you read through the statement problem, you saw the identified gaps, and you can see how research questions were framed. Can you be able to deduce if the research methodology used in that research work is correct or wrong? Somebody can see a research work just at a glance. The person will tell you that, sorry, this work is not going to fly. This work has whole lot of inconsistency. One of the major ways you can be able to flag off somebody's research work is if you have a better understanding of what research methodology is all about. I call it the sort of research. If you don't add it, your research loses taste. If you add it in excess, it brings a whole lot of inconsistency. So you must know how best to moderate your research journey. So that is why we are here. I'm just trying to give you an intro so that you can be able to give your attention to every details, everything you're going to discuss here today. And at any point in time, you get confused, because sometimes it could be confusing, to be sincere with you, because it takes a whole lot to be able to understand what research methodology entails, especially understanding from a multidisciplinary stages, where you can understand what research methodology entails to somebody who is under management, what it entails for somebody who is under sciences, what it entails for somebody who is under medicine. If you have this broad understanding, it's going to help you to be able to review works, criticize works, and also produce a quality research papers, or even carry out your own personal research activities accurately. So we'll move forward. This is the question where I was asking a question. I said, if you are challenged that you should carry out a research work titled, "Does the use of AI improve the academic performance of university students?" If this is a research work that is being given to you, irrespective of your discipline, whether you are in science or in arts or in management, somebody prompt you and say, can you do a research work to find out if the use of artificial intelligence improves academic performance of students? Somebody here might actually said yes or no, but that is not what they ask you to do. You can't say yes or no without carrying a thorough research work. The question that comes in here, other than finding out the research gap, the statement problem, and forming your research question, research objective, research hypothesis, what comes to your mind is, what will be the basis of my research methodology with respect to this topic? And once that comes in your mind, some of the questions that comes up are, one, what kind of research design am I to use? You can't talk about the kind of research design you want to use without having a proper understanding of what is research design and what are the types of research design do we have. If you're able to provide answer to that question, the next thing that comes in, what type of research method am I to use? What type of research method am I to use? What are the sources of data? How am I going to collect data? Am I going to use primary or secondary? What are the research instruments am I to deploy? Of course, research instrument is based on the type of research, the source of data you're choosing. What channel am I to use to distribute this or collect this research instrument? What is my possible population? The population I have, is it manageable or something that I need to probably reduce into a manageable sample size? How do I justify that this research I'm carrying out is going to be valid or reliable? What's the What's the degree of reliability of this research? Is the research going to observe all the ethical protocols and principles? Or will I at a point in time breach some ethical principles which renders the research invalid? Then, if I should try to maneuver all these fundamental questions, what data techniques am I going to use to analyze the data collected? If you know the data techniques, which software is going to help me? Am I going to do it manually, or am I going to deploy a use of software? You can see a whole lot that can come in when you are dealing with a research methodology. If you can be able to provide answers to all these sub-questions, then it simply means you know the direction you're going to follow to be able to carry out a very smart and thorough research on this topic. Does the use of AI improve academic performance of students? So while planning your research journey, the number one question that comes in is, do I understand what I need to embark on this journey? And that question brings you down to research methodology. That's why I call it the sort of research, the pillar of research. Get it wrong, and your research is what? Is a wasted time. Get it wrong, you mislead the public. Get it wrong, you keep going back and front with your research work. But the good news is, there is no absolute correct answer to any of these questions. They all depend on your understanding and your approach to research. I could tell you that if I'm to embark on this research, my approach can differ from any of you who wants to do this research. We might all have similar conclusions, similar recommendations, but the approach we use in getting to that conclusion could vary. That's why at the beginning I said it's just like a journey that somebody can decide to take a different route to get to their destination. But how well you plan your route takes you faster to your destination in an accurate manner with less stress. So there are some approaches you're gonna use to carry out this research. It takes you longer time to get to your destination. And it could as well bore your readers. The person will be like, why are you rigmaroling? Why can't you go straight and do this in a very simpler way? Obviously, some of the research gaps that you see comes in from research methodology. People will criticize your research techniques. People will criticize your source of data. People will criticize any of these sub-principles I told you. People can pick it up and say, this couldn't have been the best approach to use. There are better approaches to use and to still get to a better valid conclusion. So this takes us properly into the research, into this topic. What is research methodology? It is a systematic process of planning, designing, collecting, analyzing, interpreting data to answer a research question or solve a problem. It's all about the process, the planning, the design, the collection strategy, the analyzing mechanism. That's what methodology is all about. When you get this right, what does it provide to your research? It provides direction. It gives your work a high degree of validity. People can be able to attest to what you produce. It makes your results reliable, that people can base on your results and issue policies. People can base on your results to be able to make adjustment to their decision process or facilitate their decision-making process. It ensures credibility of your research. And it also makes your participants, probably you were able to do primary source of data and you use questionnaire as instrument. People who wanted to fill or who participated in filling your questionnaire, they will have this relaxation, this relaxed mind that my personal information will not be divulged. The ethical standard of the research will be protected if you do a thorough research methodology. So I am going to take each and every one of those questions I asked you earlier. I'm going to explain them, give you a better understanding, give you an insight on what they represent, how you can be able to do what, make your decision without being influenced by what another person is doing. That is why I can be able to download 10 articles online, you read them, and you decide to use a different approach to do it, because you have a better understanding of what research methodology is all about. What is research design? This is the number one under research methodology. It is the first thing that you see under research methodology. What does it entail? What is involved in research design? Research design is an overall plan and structure of a study. It specifies how data will be collected, measured, analyzed to answer questions. We have different types of research design. But before I get into that, I would like to tell you some of the benefits of this research design. What benefit does it carry when you observe a good research design, when you have better understanding of good research design? Number one, it helps you to plan your study. It helps you to achieve accuracy. It minimizes bias and prejudice. It generates reliable results. It gives you direction on where you're going. Because once you get your research design correct, every other thing falls under the type of research design that you have selected. When looking at a project topic or a research topic, you should be able to prompt yourself internally and say, which type of research design best suits this work? Get that right, and then you have a perfect direction of where you're going. As I said, you can't talk about research methodology without talking about research design. That is the number one thing you see under research design. Every article you pick, if you read through it, you will see, you can be able to identify the type of research design that they use in this particular work. What are the types of research design? We have descriptive research design. What is descriptive research design? This is a research design that prompts into an existing fact. it is more of like enumerative research. A particular example or a typical example of descriptive research design is when somebody is asking you to carry out a research of something that is already in existence, or something that a new trending fad that is having effect on people, and somebody is asking you to, can you research on this and tell us, report to us your findings if this thing is having an effect on this or not. Or on a literal evaluation of it, it could have a yes or no answer. But descriptive give you an angle opportunity to be able to dive deeper to know what has been trending, what factor is causing this problem, and what are the possible ways to control it. The example of the topic I gave you about, does AI have effect on student performance? That's a typical example of descriptive research design. Some of the peculiar ways of identifying a research that was carried out using descriptive research design is they usually make use of primary source of data. I will get into that during the course of this teaching. But one of the things that you use to identify that is it makes use of primary source of data. It interfaces with people. It evaluates people's response. You ask people questions and you get feedback from them. Those questions you're going to ask people could be done using questionnaire, it could be done using interview. That is how descriptive research design operates. It helps to evaluate people's opinion over a particular incident. You cannot independently carry out that research alone without being able to interact with people to know their own opinion over that incident. That is why it is descriptive, it is narrative in nature. You interact with people, you sample their opinion. Based on the opinion, you make your decision. That takes us into the next one. Correlational research design. This typically evaluates the degree of relationship between one variable to another variable. I'm very much sure that we are all familiar with the word variables in a research topic, right? Is there anybody who doesn't understand what is variables? So it helps us to evaluate the relationship between one variable to another variable. I'll give you an instance. If I say you should carry out a research on the relationship between inflation and standard of living, the relationship between inflation and standard of living, that's a correlational research design that you're going to use because you want to examine the degree of relationship between one variable as against another variable. Why descriptive is more of examining the effect of one variable. It could be effect, it could be impact, it could be influence, it could be role of one variable to another variable. Once you see what is this, what is the impact, the effect, the influence, the roles of one variable to another variable, it takes you to descriptive. Once you see relationship, effect of one variable as against the other in terms of relationship measurement, it takes you into correlational. The next one is expo factor. Expo factor tells you about the effect of an event that has already occurred. Descriptive tells you about what is happening now and what can happen tomorrow. Expo factor tells you what has happened in the past, not today, not tomorrow, but is investigating on what has happened in the past. It could be projected that what happened in the past could have a resultant effect in the future, but is actually inquiring about the past. Somebody can give you an instance and say, what is the effect of, let me say, exchange rate on economic development? And they will give you a range of 1994 to 2024. They will say, can you carry out a research work on the effect of GDP on economic growth from 1994 to 2024? These are past events. It has occurred previously. So you are investigating on what has happened in the past. Such research, we categorize them as expo factor research design. As I said, your findings can be used to make future decisions. That you're making inquiry of what has taken effect in the past does not make your work outdated, does not make it irrelevant. It's just like a kind of a forecast based on what has happened, the tendency of this reoccurring in the future. If this and this and this did not take effect, it has a higher probability index. So obviously, your past experience is what you're using to advise people as against a possible occurrence of or reoccurrence of events. It could measure effects, it could measure impact, it could measure influence or roles. But the difference between expo factor and descriptive is that descriptive talks about present and future, expo factor inquires about the past. So always know the difference. That you see the word effect, impact, influence, roles does not limit that research to only descriptive or expo factor. Know what you are asked to investigate on. If it is present or future, just know you're talking about descriptive. If it is in the past, you're talking about expo factor. So moving forward, the next one is experimental. People that make use of this are more of those in medical line. It tests the cause and effect of variables. By the term experimental simply means it is going to be subjected to a lab test. There will be a lab evaluation on that particular research. Most times, the independent variable can be manipulated to test against the dependent variables. So any research that will undergo a lab confirmation or evaluation process We call it experimental research design. As I said, it is commonly used by those in medical line and sciences. The next one is quasi-experimental. There is this similarity between these two. I will tell you the difference, just like the way we have similarity between expert factor and descriptive. There are similarities between both. What is the difference? The difference is experimental. You can manipulate, when I use the word manipulate, I'm not coming from the negative aspect, because I know people think that the word manipulate is all about going towards negativity. No. Manipulate means using one variable in a different ways to test the dependent variables. But in quasi-experimental, you use the independent variable constant to test the other independent variables. You don't change it. It doesn't change form. It remains constant while you're testing different subvariables. I will call it different processes of dependent variables. If you don't have understanding of what I call variables, then what I'm saying might not make sense to you. In every research, we have at least two variables present. We have independent variable, we have dependent variable. Most times, dependent variable comes first in a statement form. Why? The independent comes first, while the dependent comes last. So for the sake of those who have no idea, I'm just going to touch light on it, and then I'll come back to what I'm explaining. If you go back to this question I asked here, artificial intelligence is independent variable. It's acting upon academic performance, which is what? Dependent variable. I am sure that whoever that took lesson 1 could have explained these variables well to you. So any particular statement that does not contain at least 2 variables is not considered researchable topic. That is why during your undergraduate or postgraduate studies, if you're submitting a topic, the supervisor might say this is not researchable. Some of the reasons, or one of the major reasons why it is not researchable, is because it does not have the presence of 2 variables. You can have 2 independent without having, you can have 2 independent without having 1 dependent. That is not researchable. You must have at least 1 independent and 1 dependent before you can carry out a good research work on that particular topic. So I just want to explain what is variable, so that when I'm using the term variable, you know what I am saying. Independent comes first, dependent comes last in a research topic. Of course, during the course of developing your research topics, you can have these dependent variables subdivided into subvariables, or what we call processes. I don't want to dive into that. If I dive into that, I'm going to go back to Model 1 class, which is not what we are here for. So, because if you want to measure academic performance, there are some things you use to measure academic performance of a student. So those things that you use to measure academic performance of a student is what we consider as processes of academic performance, or subvariables of academic performance. So when I said manipulating, using independent variable to manipulate subvariables of dependent variable, this is what I'm talking about. You can use artificial intelligence to test on subvariables of academic performance. I don't want to get you guys confused, but I just want to highlight how you can be able to identify what is dependent variable and what is independent variable and what is variable itself. Variables are the strongholds upon which research work is built on. They are the things that you use. Those are the two things you act upon while you're doing your research. Every other thing that is in that topic could be either a prefix, a conjunction, or a suffix. It's just like a grammar that they spoke. But at the end, there are two things you're acting upon while you're doing your research work. Everything you're writing depends on those two variables. But I am off on that. So going back to what we are saying. So while you're talking about cross-sectional research, we are talking about a research that have a panel data. A panel data, a data that spans over a number of years. You can even carry out a research when you're not born. Probably somebody might say, can you tell us about the cause effect of World War I on people's interaction or people's response to or people's perception on the Western world? What does it mean? You're going to carry out a panel data. You're going to have a large volume of data from different countries. This is where we talk about cross-sectional data. So when you see a research that have a panel data, a data that spans over a number of years, just what comes to your mind is this is a cross-sectional research design that they are using in this research work. It's just like it has similarity with expo factor because it inquires about the past. Longitudinal has to do with possible changes over time. Some of the terms that you can see, and you know that this research is a longitudinal research, is comparative analysis. Somebody might ask you that if you carry out, let me say, the effect of merger and acquisition on probably banking performance. Merger and acquisition on banking performance. Once that topic comes in, what the first thing that comes to your mind is this is a longitudinal research design. Why? Because you're going to carry out a comparative analysis. You want to know what are the performances of bank pre-merger and acquisition, and what are their current performance post-merger and acquisition, excluding the base year. The base year is the year where the consolidation took effect. That's what we call the base year. Excluding the base year, what happened pre and what happened post? Do you think back we are doing much more better pre-merger and acquisition? Or do you think they're doing much better post-merger and acquisition? Once that comparative analysis comes in, that type of research is what we call longitudinal research design. I'm using examples of things that you can relate with, things that has happened in every part of the world. I am sure banking consolidation has happened in every country of the world. Some banks has merged, some organization has merged, some has equally acquired each other. The last but not the least is what we call case study analysis. The discipline that uses case study analysis is more of lawyers, journalists, they carry out a thorough investigation on a case file. They investigate on a scenario-based facts. One thing that is peculiar with case study analysis is sometimes they make use of primary source of data. It could come through questionnaire sharing, it could come through interview, it could come through checklists, behavioral checklists. The recent pattern that is invoked now is systematic literature review. They falls under case study analysis. You are trying to draw a conclusion based on what has happened before. Systematic review is telling you that some papers, some works has been published on a particular topic. Download these papers, read through these papers, make a comparative discussion around the patterns of reports. How many persons are in support of this, and how many persons are against of this? It is a pure case study analysis or case study research design. As I said, when journalists are embarking on a research, their work is mainly case study based. This has not been happening. Why is it happening now? What are the trends of events that has taken place that led to this? Investigative journalists will go into it and come up with a fact to prove that this thing that happened was caused as a result of this. Lawyers will bring a case file and tell you that a case file or what do they call? I don't know the terminology they use, but they'll make reference to a case that has been done previously and said, based on what they said about this case, I am telling you that this has a similarity about this case, and we are going to borrow the leaf from what has happened here to say this and this and this is black. So it is based on what has taken effect before, and then they want to use it to do what? To juxtapose what is going to happen now or why they took that stand. These are the different types of research design that we have. No one is superior to each other. It depends on the type of research you want to investigate on. None of them will you use consistently. It depends on the type of research you are embarking upon. So you that is under management can be doing a research today. You are doing a descriptive research. Tomorrow you embark in another research. You're doing ex post facto research design. So it varies according to the kind of task you're embarking upon. I was only giving you instances of fields that use different research design. That does not mean that you cannot borrow them. You cannot borrow those type of research design when you're embarking on any type of research that relates to that. So moving forward, I think I have explained all these types of research design. So I will be skipping some of these slides. I've explained them and I've given examples of them. What are the common mistakes that people make in selecting research design? Number one, mismatch. This one is common. Sometimes there could be some similarities. And if you're not well grounded on the particular or the most accurate or the appropriate research design to use, you could jump into a different one. You can have a topic that is telling you to evaluate the effect of one thing to another. And then you decide to use a different specific research objective that has to do with relationship. Obviously, because your research questions is gearing towards relationship, not minding what the topic said, you are not going to use descriptive. You're not going to use expo factor. Obviously, you're going to use correlational research design. So if you're basing your selection on only the topic, it could cause mismatch. So you need to have a better understanding of what are the research topics, research objectives, research questions that you want to answer. That gives you the best or most suitable research design to use. It could actually cause people ignoring a particular population to use. Obviously, once your research design is wrong, it affects whatever that happens beneath research design. So I will explain about this population when we get to population selection and sample size. I will link it up so I can be able to understand how selecting a wrong research design can lead to a wrong population selection and automatically leads to a wrong sample size. It can lead to poor planning of data collection. How can that be done? When you select wrong research design, the approach in which you want to use to collect your data obviously is going to change, which makes everything faulty. Not considering the time and the resources. Of course, if you select a wrong research design, it can take you to a longer time frame to complete your research work. It can cause overcomplicating research design, and it can equally affect the ethical standards of your research as well. As I said, we are going to have every topic we are treating, every subtopic we are treating, we'll be having sub questions just to make the class interactive. So you can be able to relate and understand better what we have discussed, right? So on that note, we'll be having, okay, this is more of a roadmap to the research method where you have research design, you have research method. So I'm going to enumerate this more when we get down to other slides. So we have this question here. So I want everybody to attempt this question. Based on my explanation, if you're being presented with these questions, what type of research design are you going to use? Which of the research design do you think is best fit for either of these questions? So I want everybody to attempt it. Drop your answer on the chat box. All I need is number one, this type of research design. Number two, this type of research design. Number three, this type of research design. If you can explain why you selected it, that will be perfect as well. So I'm giving 2 minutes for that. Chidima, do you have any answer yet?
So far we're not getting any answers. Is there any difficulty with writing down your answers? Or does anybody want to speak up? Okay, Ololade has given us an answer. I think there are about 6 questions here. Ololade,
Yes, questions.
am I getting 3 answers from Ololade?
After I
Although she,
type the answer to a question and I try to go back to the question to go and answer the other one, it's like it deletes the one I've typed before. So that's slowing me down a bit.
okay. So do you want to say it out? Is that okay? Can they orally give their answers?
They
Okay, so
can.
Theophilus, please go ahead and give your answers.
If you want to speak up, please feel free to do so.
Okay, we have just
I need everyone to give an answer to that.
Hello.
Hi.
Good afternoon, sir. And good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, so number one answer is I chose descriptive because it wants to administer well. Let me check. But I'm sure number 2 is correlation now. I'm trying to see the relation. And number 3 is experimental. But I'm not sure of number 1. But I chose descriptive anyways. But number 4 is ex post facto. Oh no, or longitudinal. Longitudinal, yes. Because it's over a period of time. And number 5, a researcher looks at existing hospital records to find out whether if it is existing. I'm trying to see what I jotted down in correlation to. Okay, I'll go for case study. Or quasi-experimental.
Okay, and then number
6, a researcher conducts an in-depth on how a small community coped with flooding using interviews. Oh, using interviews will be, let me check my notes again. Using interviews will be...
Okay. Okay, so please, can you mute yourself,
will be
please? Will be what? Okay, great. Please, I just wanted to, just for the purpose of organization and time management, we might not be able to have you come on the call and then check your notes so that we're able to manage time. Just imagine if everybody comes on the call and they're checking their notes before giving response. So even if you want to say something, I can already see Chidima and Lady Rachel doing that. That's amazing. Please raise your hands. The only person that has correctly answered using the chatbot so far is Dansu Martha Morton. That's the exact way it should be arranged, 1 to 6. If you want to speak, please plan what you want to say so that you don't come on the call and say, we might not be able to take that many people. And I think for just answering questions, let's see if we can take like 2, 3 people, and then we'll give the floor back to our teacher so that we're able to manage time. So thank you so much. Let's hear from, okay, there are 3 Chidimas here. Let's hear from Chidima Umenadi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, these are the answers that I can give for the questions. For number one question, I would say it's a cross-sectional analysis. The reason why is because a cross-sectional analysis is done at a particular period of time. So, and if you see from the question, it says to determine the prevalence of anxiety among students by offering questionnaires. So I think it's more like a survey. Then the second one, I would say it's a correlation research design that should be used because it's studying relationship. Then the third one is experimental research design because the third one is experimental research design because we're introducing a teaching method, and I'll say it's more like an RCT. So then the fourth one, hypertension over time, it's a longitudinal research design because we're doing a time series data analysis here. Then the fifth one, where a researcher is looking at existing hospital records to find out whether smoking. So to me, I think this can be true research design because when you are trying to study smoking status and incidence of heart disease, it can be a correlation. It can be a correlation study, and also it can be a cross-sectional. No, it's a correlation study for me. Then number 6, a researcher conducts an in-depth investigation. This is a case study. So these are my responses to the question.
All right, Chidima Uminadi, thank you so much. Let's hear from Lady Rachel. So after Lady Rachel, then we'll hear from Chidima Chikwendu, and that will be all. Then we'll give the mic back to our instructor so that he continues.
Okay, thank you. So I think I agree with Chidima's responses. For number 3, I'm not very sure. I'm thinking it's quasi-experimental design because I think the classes are already existing. Okay. And the intervention is to compare 2 groups, right? And then the classes are already existing. So I think it's a quasi experimental design. And then number 5, I'm also thinking is ex post facto because the researcher is looking at existing hospital records to find out whether smoking status is associated with the incidence of heart disease. Right, so it's using an existing data or a past existing data, that is records that already exist, to look at what factors, at that point contribute to the incidence of heart disease. I mean, what's the records that already exist. For the rest, I agree. The case study for number 6, the longitudinal design for number 4, and then the correlational for number 2, and then cross-sectional for number 1. So the only difference is the third and then the 5th one. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Lady Rachel. Thank you. Really appreciate you. Chidima Chikwendu, please go ahead. Please, if you've not answered, we expect you to put your answers in the comments. And if you've also answered, please put down your hand so that I don't think that I need to take you.
Okay, this is Chidima Chikwendu speaking. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. So for number 1, I think the answer is descriptive because the researcher wants to determine that the anxiety among university students. So he wants to like determine something that is already existing, that's descriptive. Then the second answer is correlational, because he wants to find out the relationship between two things. Then the third one is experimental, because he wants to determine the teaching method between class A and class B. Then the fourth answer for me is cross-sectional, because it spans over years, number of years. Then the fifth one is experimental. Experimental because it has to do with medicine. It's science-based, and experimental is best used for that. Then the sixth one, I would say, is case study. More like a journalist or maybe someone trying to find out something, like it's case study. Thank you. That's my answer for the questions.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Brilliant, 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 brilliant. Please keep your answers coming on the chat. Okay, so we're handing it back to our teacher. Tell us what we've gotten and what we failed. So over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Chidima. What do you reckon? Do you suggest we display the answers now, or should we leave it towards the end of the class?
Okay, we could leave it towards the end of the class so that we can get more answers and more comments on the chat box.
Okay, thank you. So even those that actually spoke, if you can drop your answers on the chat box, that can help us to trace who actually got it right. And if you have it 6/6, we have more exercises to do. Whoever that got all of them correct, we have a prize from me. So keep your answers on chat box so that we can track who got it right. Thank you. So moving forward, I'm going to drop that slide because that's the next slide where we have the answer. So I hope it doesn't come up. Yeah, I've skipped that. So we are moving to research approaches. So in dealing with research approaches, we have just give me a sec. So what is research approach? Research approach tells us about a specific techniques, procedures, or tools researchers use to collect, measure, and analyze data to answer their research questions. What this entails is every research we have specifically 3 categories of research approaches, or we have 3 research approaches. So every research falls under either of them. It's either you're doing A, you're doing B, or you're doing C. So you cannot be doing 2 out of the 3 research approaches. You can only do 1 at a time. It could be confusing sometimes that when you're doing a research work, you don't know the approach that you're using, the research approach you're using. As I said, it has to do with a specific techniques or procedure or tools that researchers use to collect, measure, and analyze their data, right? So it has its own importance, right? As I added in the slide here, collect appropriate evidence needed to answer research questions, improve accuracy and credibility by using systematic approach, reduce biases and errors during data collection and analysis, ensure consistency on how information is collected, support valid conclusion based on evidence rather than assumptions, very important, and then make research transparent and reproducible what? Because others can understand how findings were obtained. So what are the research approaches? We have quantitative research approach. We have qualitative research approach. And then we have the one we call mixed approach. I'm sure that that terminology is familiar with all of you, because I saw some people who are answering the question using the term qualitative as part of research design. That is not a research design. Quantitative, qualitative, or mixed is not a research design. It's called research approach. So here comes the three of them. I'm going to take my time to explain what this entails, so that at a slide of a particular research work, you can be able to know what type of research approach did they use. Quantitative. Quantitative. What I use to identify quantitative, I said, is numeric base. It is numeric base. It is a type of research approach that involves a systematic collection and analysis of numeric data to measure variables, identify patterns, test relationship or hypotheses, and generalize findings to a large population. So underline the word numeric. It is numerical base. It plays with figure. Some of the research designs that falls under quantitative research includes number one, expo factor. Don't forget that expo factor is talking about you inquiring on what has already existed. So you cannot be talking about what has already existed without having a fact that is on ground. Correlational still fall under quantitative research. Case study also falls under quantitative research. Any type of research that takes you into assessing, examining, evaluating whatever has taken effect previously, it means only but one thing: there are facts on ground. There are facts on ground. There's an existing data that you need to go and collect from somewhere. So once there are facts on ground, an existing fact on ground, it gears towards quantitative research approach. If you understand this way, it will help you to be able to unmask any type of research you see, what categories they fall under. Once it has to do with analyzing past figures. For instance, if I say, what is the effect of GDP on economic growth? It simply means, then let me say from 1990 to 2025, for instance, right? So it simply means there are existing figures about GDP since 1990 to 2025. There are numerical data on the process of economic growth, because economic growth is not, there's no figure you can use to quantify economic growth, one particular figure. Economic growth or economic development has things that you can use to quantify them. That is why in your research, you break down the variables into process. or into what you call subvariables. Is that you use the terminology subvariable or you use the terminology process. So the process of independent variable is what you're going to research on, is where your database collection is limited on. So the term economic growth or economic development as independent variable does not have one particular database where you're going to go to collect the term. Say this data, this series of data is economic development or economic growth. No, there are things that make up economic development, things like standard of living, things like consumption rate, things like income per capita, things like HDI, Human Development Index. These are some of the processes that you can use to quantify economic development. At some point, you can use things like death rates to quantify economic development. How often does people die? Rate of school enrollment. Rate of school dropouts. So these are some of the processes you can use to quantify all those dependent variables. So I deviated a bit to explain those things so you can understand that most of the dependent variables does not stand as a numerical fact that you can find. Rather, you find their subvariables to be able to make a meaning of that dependent variable, right? So quantitative data helps you to be able to dig into those processes that you use to measure either the dependent variable or the independent variable. But the only thing that you need to be rest assured is there are existing facts. The fact could be in numerative base, it could be in what do you call it? A kind of a write-up, somewhere documented write-ups. So we categorize it as quantitative in nature. What is qualitative? Qualitative data has to do with exploration, and interpreting non-numerical data to understand meaning, experiences, perceptions, and context, providing an in-depth insight into a phenomenon or societal reality. There are this complication that comes in. People ask you, does the use of questionnaire as an instrument for data collection fall under qualitative or does it fall under quantitative? It's a very confusing question. Does questionnaire is a source of primary data that they use to collect is a type of data instrument that they use to collect data when you are doing primary data sourcing. And I'm asking, does questionnaire fall under quantitative or does it fall under qualitative? The answer to that question is questionnaire could be either on quantitative and it could be either on qualitative. It depends on the type of questionnaire that you're structuring. We have basically two types of questionnaire structuring. We have open-end questions, we have closed-end questions. When you are doing open-end questions, where does it fall under? When you are doing closed-end questions, where does it fall under? So once you can be able to identify these things, you know where they fall under. If you are doing open-end questions, it falls under quantitative. If you are doing close-end question, it falls under qualitative. I know some people will be asking me, what is open-end question? What is open-end, close-end question? Can you give us an example of how it looks like? Yes, I'll provide samples of those questions during the course of this training. Then we have mixed method. Mixed method is a combination of both. You can do a research work where you're using both of them. Don't forget, the type of research approach you're going to use depends on the type of research question that you structured. I always make reference to research question because that is the fundamental inquiry that you want to carry out and you want to provide answers to them. Your findings need to align with your research questions. You can't be asking question A and you're providing finding of question D. It doesn't work that way. All your findings must align with your fundamental questions. That is what is pushing you into this research. What is that thing that is missing that you want to find? You want to get an answer. That's what we call research question. And obviously, your research question is always in line with our research objectives. We only convert research objective into a question form to make it a research question. And also, we convert research objective into a tentative statement to make it a research hypothesis. I'm not going to go into that because I believe whoever did chapter 1, the chapter 1 of this model did justice to that. Because the three things I mentioned, research question, research objectives, and then research hypothesis, all of them must align together. All of them must be in line. The only difference is the form of those statements. Are they in question form? Yes, they are under research question. Are they in a simple sentence form? Yes, they are under research objectives. Are they under tentative form? Yeah, they're under research hypothesis. So how you structure either of those things, either research question, research objective, or research hypothesis, predetermines which of this research approach you're going to use. Are you using quantitative? Are you using qualitative? Or are you using both of them? For instance, if you do, let me say, want to carry out the effect of, what do I use now as an instance? Let me see if there's any example I used here. No, I did not. But now, let me say, if you want to make use of, if you're doing a research work on the effect of COVID-19 on organizational performance, the effect of COVID-19 on organizational performance, you can structure that topic, it can have research questions that can prompt you into downloading numerical data to carry out your research. You can frame it in a way that you can use questions, interviews, observation checks to back up your facts. Once you're using close-end questions, interviews, observation checks, automatically the type of research approach you're going to use will fall under qualitative. If you're using numerical facts, downloading data from different database, it goes under qualitative. If you're making use of both, you structured your question that question 1 need you to go and get numerical facts. Question 2 need you to go and do interview. Obviously, you're going to make use of the mixed method because you did not align your research questions or your research objective in a way that it follows one particular pattern. You did it. Number 1 will go with numerical fact. Number 2 will go with okay, let me give a practical example now. For instance, if you're doing the effect of what do you call it now? Merger and acquisition on organizational performance. Merger and acquisition, they can use the revenue generation, pre and post as an instance. If you say what is the effect of merger and acquisition on the revenue generation, automatically it's gearing towards numerical fact. Then in the next question you're asking what are the factors affecting merger and acquisition? Obviously, you are moving away from numerical facts. There's no way factors is going to come under figures. You then need to ask questions to know the factor that was limiting or hindering or affecting merger and acquisition. So obviously, you're going towards qualitative in nature. So there's a way you ask your questions. You use both mix. You use mix, which is qualitative and quantitative. But if you structure your question in a similar way, you could stick to qualitative, you could stick to quantitative. All I said is quantitative has to do with numerical facts. Qualitative has to do with exploration. So moving forward, we have these are the differences of the three different research approaches. They said focus, it measures numerical patterns, as I said, about quantitative. While qualitative, it's exploratory in nature. It's based on experiences, meaning and understanding of what is going on. So you have to ask questions to be able to get your facts. While mix has to do with combination of both. Data collection, quantitative is number-based. While qualitative is word or narrative or observation in nature. Of course, the mix is combination of both, word and numbers. Questions. How many questions? How much? Is there any relationship between those two variables that you're investigating on? Once you're talking about the relationship, whatever, it goes into quantitative. So all these differences boils down to that quantitative is numerical based, while qualitative is word, narrative, and observation based. Mix is combination of both. With this explanation, I could tell you that the research method that falls under quantitative and research design that falls under qualitative. Expo factor falls under quantitative because it is figure based. Correlational could either be quantitative or qualitative, depends on how you structure your research question. Case study could be under quantitative or qualitative, but more of it is under quantitative. Longitudinal is under quantitative because it is numerical based. Experimental, because you are still carrying out the research, you want to explore, it falls under qualitative. So obviously you cannot see that once you're doing your research work and you have already selected that you want to carry out an expo factor research design. Once you have ticked that box, what comes in is what type of research approach is going to be quantitative. You tick that box. Then you now wait for other things. So this is a simple flow chart of how this either of the research approaches works. This is the flow chart. If you have a look, you see the flow chart. If you have any question, please keep dropping it on the chat box. If you are confused at any point, keep dropping your question on the chat box, or you can write it down if you want to speak. Now we have another practical activity to do. For my explanation about quantitative, qualitative, or mix, as I told you, quantitative is numerical based. Qualitative is word, narrative, observation based. While mix is a combination of both. I gave instances on how you can structure your question, and it will lead you into using mixed research approach, and how you can structure your questions, and it will lead you into using quantitative, and how you can structure your research questions, it will lead you to qualitative. Now we have an exercise here where you can practically express yourself, your understanding of what qualitative, quantitative, and mixed method entails in a research question. So if you are being given this as an instance and said, can you tell us which of these methods can be used in any of these questions? What would be your answer? So it requires critical thinking. So drop your answers on the chat box, and if you want to speak, you can raise your hand up. Chidima will take care of that. Chidima, are you happy to have a look to see if there's anyone that wants to speak?
Yes, I'm on that now. So, like Mr. Stanley earlier mentioned, if you want to speak, just raise your hands up and I'll take it from there. Okay, Lady Rachel says, 1 minute. Let me open that up. Quantitative and correctional. Is she the only person? I don't want to call names though, because I can call names. I'll just go to the name of all participants and start calling them out one by one. And I know you don't want that, so can we speak? If you want to say something, raise your hands. If you want to drop something on the chat. Okay, Chidima Shikrindu, please go ahead.
Okay, for the first question, I would say is quantitative because the researcher wants to determine whether there is a relationship between the number of hours. So it has to do with numbers, like the teacher explained. So number 2, I would say it falls under qualitative because the researcher wants to understand the nurse's experience. That it has to do with behavior. Then number 3, I would say it falls under mixed method because the researcher wants to determine how many university students use artificial intelligence, that it has to do with numbers. Then also understand the experience that motivates and concerns about using. So it has to do with the mix, that's qualitative and quantitative. Then number 4, I'll still say it has to do with quantitative and qualitative, because it also has to do with numbers and experience, that's relationship too. Then the fifth one, I'll say is qualitative, sorry. So the numbers are already established, so they just want to understand why patients are satisfied or dissatisfied, and explore the experiences behind the survey findings. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Chidima. Thank you. Chidima.
Yeah, Chidima, before you make your comment, I just need to do a little clarification.
So I wonder why we are having just the same set of people speaking. Okay, some people are dropping things on the chat. Okay, so Chidima, go ahead. Then I'm going to read.
Okay, I agree with the responses that Chukendo has given, but where I do not agree is question 4. Yes, it says an organization wants to investigate whether employees who receive more hours of professional training achieve higher productivity. So then it now says it tends to collect numeric data. So they already have a sample group of who they are interested in. So they just want to investigate it using the data. So that's why I'll go for, instead of a mix, I'll go for a quantitative approach in question 4. Every other of our answer aligns with mine.
Thank you so much, Chidima, for sharing. Thank you. So also in the comments, we have Lady Rachel. I think I've read out her answer. Number 1 is quantitative or correctional. We have Ugochukwu Chukwuka Michael. His number 1 is quantitative. His number 2 is qualitative. His number 3 is mixed methods. His number 4 is quantitative. His number 5 is mixed methods. We have Olawale. His number 1 is quantitative. His number 2 qualitative. His number 3 mixed. His number 4 quantitative. His number 5 qualitative. We have Nzekwe Sandra. Number 1 quantitative. Number 2 qualitative. Number 3 mixed. Number 4 quantitative. Number 5 qualitative. Dansu Martha Morton. I have to say, Dansu, your answer looks so organized. Well done. Number 1 is number of hours. Number 2, quantitative. Sorry, pardon me. Number 1, number of hours, quantitative. Number 2, interviews, qualitative. Number 3, interviews or tools, mixed methods. Number 4, number of hours and productivity, quantitative. Number 5, mixed methods. Chidima Menadi, I think we've heard you before. Quantitative, qualitative, mixed methods, quantitative, qualitative. Yeah. So pretty much well done, guys. Please, this is how the comment section should be, as vibrant as possible. I also want to remind you guys, please, if you have questions, ask your questions. Please ask questions and make sure that you're interacting with your lecturer, because you might not get this opportunity. If you want to see Mr. Stanley next time, you might pay. So now that you have him, better make use of that opportunity, because I don't even know where you want to see him again. But if you do, I don't know if you can afford Mr. Stanley. Okay, so well done, guys. Back to you. The mic is over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your coordination. I just wanted to do a big clarification on something. Please, if you see a question, even if you use the word score or the term numeric, that does not necessarily mean it must be quantitative in nature. Sit back and ask yourself, this question, can it be asked? Or do you think there is a documented figure somewhere that you can be able to extract? If the answer is yes, automatically it falls under quantitative. But if you think it will be difficult to be able to get a numerical figure documented somewhere or reserved somewhere, then it leads you into either doing an interview or probably sharing a questionnaire, and depending on the type of questionnaire you're sharing, right, which could either be qualitative or quantitative. As I said, there are no right answers. It depends on your backends. But there could be wrong answer when it is so obvious that this thing has a documented figure somewhere that you can extract. Why stressing yourself going into asking, carrying out interviews with people and then prolonging your research? I don't know if my answer makes sense, but what I'm trying to say is don't be driven by the term score or the term numeric in a statement, and then you conclude that it must be quantitative. Read it, digest it, consume it, and ask yourself, can I be able to extract a documented fact on this? Do you think that is because it's all about how you think, your thinking process, how you can be able to come up with facts. Do I think I can get it somewhere? If yes, where can I get it? Is it from the organizational website? Is it from public database? But if these things are not possible, what alternative way can I go answering this question, right? That's number one. Number two, I always tell people, try everything possible. Try everything possible to avoid using mixed method because it is complicated. Unless you are well grounded in research, that is the only way you can use both, right? Structure your question in a way that it is either it is flowing with quantitative in nature or it's flowing with qualitative in nature. Somebody is asking, Ugomaya, note taker, AI, is your question to record this meeting? Sorry for that. That's a command that came up here, so I'm trying to find out who this person is. But as I was trying to explain, I can't remember what I was saying. Can somebody remind me what I was saying?
Yes, sir, that we should try and avoid mix method.
Thank you. So, as I said, try everything possible to avoid the use of mixed research method. I'm not saying that it is wrong, but it's a bit complicated because you might have to extract data from public domain or from organizational website, and then at the same time, you are carrying out sharing a questionnaire or you are doing an interview, and then being able to manage those different database could be very, 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 very demanding in a research work. It takes a whole lot of time to be able to maneuver the whole stuff unless you are grounded, because one is going to prompt the readers or the reviewers to ask you questions. How were you able to match this and this? And why did you decide to use mixed method? I could tell there are people that are well balanced in research, but they try everything possible to avoid making use of mixed method, right? So the nature of your questions really determines if it's going to be mixed or if it's going to be what? If it's going to be either qualitative or quantitative. I'll give a practical example where somebody is carrying out a research work on a effect of merger and acquisition on organizational performance. Performance can be measured using numerical figures such as revenue. It could be gross profit margin, it could be net profit margin, it could be total assets, it could be so many things that even revenue, right? You can use that to measure. It could even be total asset return, total equity return. So there's so many things you can use to measure organizational performance. Then measure, there's so many things you can use to measure as well. But if you're not asking questions relating to probably what is the effect of for question 1, to determine the effect of merger and acquisition on the total revenue generated. That one can be gotten from revenue on the financial statement of that organization, right? But now the second question, he said, what is the effect of merger and acquisition on organizational capacity? Capacity can be gotten by probably total of their equity, right? Now, the third question, instead of you to continue to flow on the angle of numerical data, you now come and ask, what are the factors limiting or factors that cause delay in merger and acquisition? You are completely off, because there's no way you can get limiting factors as a numerical figure. You must ask questions to be able to get factors that you are causing limitation for people to go into merger and acquisition. Do you understand what I'm saying? So all I'm saying is, be conscious of how you frame your questions, how you frame your research objective. That will take you either using quantitative or qualitative, and also the kind of research question, research topic that you are investigating upon. If it's something that you can, because normally what I do is, once I see a topic, I ask myself, which method is best to use for this? I am a fan of quantitative because I like figures a lot, right? I like figures a lot. I don't like speaking too much English and writing too much English. So I believe that figures are easy for me to extract and do whatever I want to do, right? That does not mean I'm still not good at qualitative. I do very well at qualitative as well. But I try as much as I can to avoid using both, because it takes a whole lot of time. It makes you to be so careful in doing carrying out your research work, and also it positions you to be able to be challenged by so many authorities. So at the end of the day, the time is going to take you to defend your work. Somebody who did either quantitative or qualitative has completed their job and move on. So all I'm saying is, if you have a way of avoiding it, avoid using mix. And the only way to avoid it is for you to stick to similar pattern of question and not bring qualitative question into quantitative research work. That's just to clear that angle. And also, I saw some people making use of saying, if I ask you when they say correlational is not a research approach. Descriptive is not a research approach. Those things are research design. Don't mix them up. Don't mix them up. Somebody cannot be asking you a question about research design. You are telling the person that is quantitative in nature. That is not research design. That is research approach. So just be mindful of the kind of answers you give, so that you don't take an answer that belongs to a different category of either research method or research design, and then be using it to answer questions that has to do with research approach. It could be confusing, as I said, but mastering it makes it clearer to you, and also make you position you in a good way of being able to justify whichever method that you choose. That is just to clear that air, so that you don't jump into using method every single time, because it can lead into crisis. Especially as an early career researcher, I advise you avoid using mixed method. Stick either to quantitative or qualitative. But if you can maneuver your way, that's fine. So moving forward, just drop your answers on the chat box. We'll compare it. So I'm going to as well jump this and go into this. So we have the next one is what we call data sources. I mentioned this at the beginning of the class about data sources. What is data sources? Data sources is the method in which the researcher chooses to collect their data or to collect their facts. That's what we call data sources. So primarily, we have two major data sources. Number one is primary data source, and the second one is secondary data source. Anything, there is no other data source except these two. So it's either you're carrying a research work that is primary based, or you're carrying a research work that is secondary based. So what are these primary base and secondary base? Primary data source is, I'm looking for a way to define that to you so that you can have a better understanding of it. It is a type of research that the researcher collects data by having an interaction with people. It is a type of research that the data is being collected by having an interaction or people's responses. That research cannot be completed without having a feedback from people. That's what we call primary base data. The instrument that you can use to collect this data includes, number one, questionnaire. I'm very much sure that all of us are familiar with the term questionnaire. Questionnaire is an instrument that you use to ask people questions based on your research objective or based on your research questions to get a concrete feedbacks from them. Another instrument is interview. You can carry out an interview on people, ask them questions. You can record their conversation with people on interview with their consent. It can also be observational checks. So these are the three major primary data. These are the major primary data sources. Is that you're using a questionnaire, an interview, or observational checks. If I want to go one step ahead, I could tell you that systematic literature review can be categorized as primary source of data. Why is this so? It is so because you are using people's opinion on an already published paper to make your conclusion. You are using people's opinion, people's conclusions to be able to do what? To gather your data and analyze and then make your own conclusions. So that is one step ahead from the normal traditional primary data source instrument. So the advance of it is what we call systematic literature review. That has to do with you reviewing people's papers, published papers, and basing your conclusion on their opinions. So as I said, primary has to do with using people's opinion, feedbacks to be able to conclude your research work. Don't get it twisted. Don't get confused. The next type of data sourcing is what we call secondary data source. This is a type of data that is being collected from a registered, it could be private, it could be public database. They are numerical based in nature. Primary data is word or narrative based in nature, word narrative or observational based in nature, while secondary is numerical based in nature. So obviously, you can see that if you are carrying out a quantitative research, your type of data sourcing must be secondary data. If you're carrying out a qualitative research, your source of data must be primary based. So if you can understand how these things are being linked up, it's going to help you to be able to know that once you select your research design, you can be able to know what are the other categories that falls under it without making any mistake. Some of this numerical data could be economic-based data. It could be financial-based data. When I mean economic-based data, I talk about things that have to do with economy, inflation, exchange rate, consumption rate, interest rate, GDP, Human Development Index, income per capita, death rate, birth rate, population census. So anything that has to do with economy generally is what we'll call it economic database. So they all fall under secondary data. But if you are doing the financial base, it also fall under secondary data, which has to do with gross profit, net profit, return on assets, return on equity, revenue, cost of goods, anything that is financial based. And whatever that is financial based, you always get those data from the website of those organizations. When you go to their website, you go to what we call investors and relation. I think so. Investors and we'll probably for half time we can practice some of those things. Investors and relations. Then from there you can be able to see the annual report. If you download it, you can be able to extract any financial data that you need. You're looking for economic data. You can get economic data from Statista, from World Bank. So there are so many public domains that you can get economic data. So just know that secondary base is numerical base, while primary base is word narrative and observational base. I think this one should not be confusing because it is pretty straightforward. It's pretty straightforward. So how does this, I think in this slide, I was able to explain some of the sources here in the slide. And also, is there anything I need to explain in this slide that I didn't touch? Yeah, as I say, some of the sources here is government statistics and census data, hospital and administrative record, existing research database, company records and financial statements, national surveys, statistics, national surveys, organizational database, and then report. And so this report records. So these are some of the places that you can be able to extract or get access to data depending on what you're working on. All these things I mentioned here as common sources areas, they have their website, verifiable website. So you can't just wake up one morning and then you cook up a data and said you got the data, because every data that you extract, you must always beneath it. You always put the source. Where is this data coming from? You are not an authority to generate data, to manipulate data, to produce data by yourself. The data must be traced. It must be verifiable by other people. If you tell me that this data was generated from for instance, from Statista, I can go to Statista and log in and look for that particular data and check if it is there or not. And if what you're reporting is not what is inside there, their research work is void. You have wasted the whole of your time doing rubbish in your research work. You tell me that the report is coming from organizational website. I will go to organizational website and download it and check. What I need to do is just to carry out 2 or 3 checks of all the whole data that you presented. And if I see one that is faulty, everything you have done is rubbish. That's what it means. You have completely wasted your time. So secondary database have their own database center where it is being stored. But when it comes to primary database, you create your database collection center. And how can you do that? Gone are the days where you structure questionnaire and you begin to distribute them in hand. You just do it and you see Mr. A. You say, Mr. A, please, can you fill this in and give it back to me? Please, Mr. C, are you happy to fill this and give it back to me? We have gone beyond that stage. Because of the use of technology, we no longer encourage people to go into paper produced questionnaires. You either use Google Form questionnaire or you use Microsoft questionnaire. As I said, if we have time, we'll go into this. I will give you a practical example of how you can design Google Form questionnaire. That is the one that I'm sure you guys are familiar with. This is the one that somebody will send you a link and say, can you click on this link and fill up my questionnaire? And you just click it, the thing will just come up like this. I'll be seeing things to tick. Strongly agreed, this, agreed, this, disagreed, this, strongly disagree. So at the end of the whole thing, you submit it. Once you submit that thing, it's not disappearing, it's registering on the database of the researcher. It goes to their email. That is where they extract it. It goes to their email. Those feedbacks goes to their email. And they open their email and they will extract those data and use it and do the analysis. And tomorrow, if somebody is suspecting that that data is manipulated, you can generate your database. You can give access to your database and tell the person, this is the feedbacks I got from people, right? My sample size is 100. These are the 100 people that responded to my questionnaire. And they will always give you a time frame. Once that time frame elapses, they will close that questionnaire in a way that if you click on that link again, they will say, this research work has expired or this link has expired. You can no longer fill any question or return any feedback to that question, right? So you create your own database. It could be on Google, which is your email. It could be on Microsoft, which is the Outlook. The two are the same. The difference is the platform you're using. If you're using your Google account to create a Google Form questionnaire, it returns back to your what? Google account, Gmail account. If you're using Microsoft Outlook, which is the one Office people normally use, you create Microsoft questionnaire and it returns back to your Outlook. That is where you store it. That is where you get it. Same thing is applicable to interviews and observational checks. Observational checks are those things that you see that somebody will say, what are the best practices of hygiene? You see, number 1, washing of hand. Number 2, avoid touching of walls. Number 3, drying of hand. Number 4, probably they will find one other thing again. Those things are observational checks. Once you click on those things and submit, it returns to that is not disappearing. It goes back to whoever generated that data, that questionnaire, and sent it to you. So this is just to clarify this so that you understand that it's either you're doing primary or you're doing secondary. How do you know? It depends on the instrument that you're using. As I said, the instrument could be, just a final recap, the instrument could be questionnaire, interview, observational checks, or systematic literature review. Why this one has to do with numerical base? which you can get either from public statistics or census record. You could get it from administrative or hospital records. You can even get it from educational record, because education has a database that is different. So if you're doing anything that has to do with education, they have their own database where you can go and get it. Some of these database might not be open to you. You need to fill up, especially when it has to do with a hospital. If it is for carrying out a research work in a hospital, like I give an instance, the research paper I did last that's still under review. It has to do with something on mental health, right? The effect of technology on improvement in access to mental health patients, right? Now, because I'm doing something that has to do with mental health, I need to write a request of approval to organization that is in charge of mental health record. So it takes a couple of days for them to approve my request. When it is being approved, they will give me access to a link with a password and a username. What does it entail? If tomorrow something goes wrong with that data I generated, I am going to be held accountable. So there are some of these organizations that their database is restricted and they need to seek for request before it can be granted. So that is for the data sources. Then we have what we call data ethics. Data ethics has to do with these are principles and standards that guides researchers to conduct studies responsibly. Underline that word, responsibly, right? Protect participants, very important. You don't, because you're carrying out a research work, you expose your participants. Your research should not harm your participants. You must respect their rights and their dignity. In UK, we call it Equality Act. You must respect their rights and dignity. At any point in time, your participants feel threatened, they can sue you for violating their rights and dignity. You must promise them that the research will observe all the ethical standards, which include protecting their rights and dignity. Your participant must have a right to withdraw at any point in time. There should not be any restriction or time frame of withdrawal. If I feel not comfortable continue giving my input in your research, I can withdraw. Right? So this is what we call research ethics. You can do a thorough research work and something happens, and whoever that is reviewing the work will say, unfortunately, this research has failed the ethical standards. It simply means you have violated the ethical standards. The key ethical principles include, number one, informed consent. The participant must give their consent genuinely without you being manipulative. You don't coerce your participant to get involved in your research work. This is mainly applicable to those who are doing primary data. You cannot interview people against their wishes. You don't take people's photos without their consent. You can't be interviewing somebody and you're videoing the person and you did not seek for the consent. No, it is not allowed in research. Research is not a place where you do whatever you desire. No, there are protocols and principles that you must follow while you're doing your research. And those principles are called research ethics. Trust me, if you break a research ethics, you can go to prison. You can go in for it. You can be sentenced to few years of imprisonment for violating somebody's rights and dignity. So, number two, voluntary participation. People should volunteer to do it without you paying them money. You don't need to pay somebody to get involved in your research, especially when you are trying to get feedback. Paying money means you are coercing them, you are inducing them, you are bribing them to get involved. It is not a voluntary activity. It is not a self-will stuff. As I said, they must have a right to withdraw at any point in time they feel not secure. Their safety is no longer guaranteed. They can withdraw without any form of restriction. You must also maintain confidentiality and privacy of your respondent. These are part of ethics principle. You can't be carrying out your research work. For instance, you are asking Chidinma to fill up a questionnaire about how government is not treating people well, and you are giving out Chidinma's data. It's not allowed. Chidinma must feel protected. Her information must be confidential. Things that can lead to a direct trace of who she is must be protected. So you must make sure you maintain minimal possible harm to your participants. Then data protection, you must adhere to the data protection laws. In UK, we call it GDPR. It's one of the strongest laws in the UK. Once you violate it, you are gone. There's no excuse. There's no way you can. Nobody's going to excuse you for anything. Once you breach it, you are gone. So every country has their data protection law. So your research must observe research integrity. And then the final one, you must get ethical approval. This ethical approval, this is what I was telling you that when the recent research I did, the ethical approval is what I sent to the organization asking for an approval to use their data. They gave me approval and they gave me login details. So if you, for instance, again, if you're working with a particular organization and you are carrying out a research of that particular organization, you need ethical approval, irrespective of that data being an open space. You need an ethical approval because you can divulge a confidential information about that company to the public. You are working with UBA Bank and you want to carry out a research work about UBA Bank. You need ethical approval from the top managers of that organization before you can carry out a research work. So these are the key ethical principles that you must adhere to before your work can be certified that it adheres to all the ethical principles and conventions. So what are the advantages of these ethical principles? Number one, it protects participants and respects their rights and integrity. Very important. It builds public trust in your research. Once you adhere to all these things, it builds public trust. It protects researchers and institutions as well. It supports legal and professional compliance. And the final one is it ensures knowledge is produced responsibly and ethically. You don't do things the way you want to do it. You do things the way society laid down their rules for you to do them. The next one is validity of your research work. This has to do with the extent to which a research instrument, which is, I've explained what is a research instrument now. I think I've explained that. I'm not going to go into that again. So it has to do with the degree of which your research instrument is accurate. How is it accurate? Is it verifiable? Is it reliable? So how do you carry out this? The types of validity tests that can be carried out in your work is one, content validity. Content validity has to do with number one, are you doing appropriate citation? I think I was here last week when Sandra was trying to teach, she taught us how people need to cite work appropriately. Content validation has to do with how well did you cite your work, or are you lifting people's work as your personal idea without citing it? Of course, that is plagiarism crime. And once it happens, you are going in for it. So content validation has to do with the way, how adequately did you cite your work? Construct validity. This has to do with the genuineness of the things you represented. For instance, if you're carrying out a theoretical review and you're trying to explain or expand somebody's theory, how well are you expanding this theory different from the original purpose of the profounder of that theory? Are you being mischievous with your expansion? Are you trying to be a kind of being biased and trying to navigate using that particular theory to establish your point different from the original profounder of that theory? Then the next one is internal validation. Internal validation has to do with people going to verify what you said exists. Is it existing? For instance, you are saying, according to World Bank 2025, that the death rate in Nigeria or in Ghana or in African country is 2 billion, for instance. You say 2 billion. If I take that in and check online, can I be able to see your direct source where you're putting this? That is what we call internal validation. Can I validate it internally that this thing you're quoting is accurate? Then external sources has to do with the ones that people that are evaluating your work. Now, for instance, if you seek for if you seek for ethical approval, people can use their ethical approval to seek for validation from those organizations. That is why you always attach your ethical approval at the end of your research work, so that those who are reviewing it can use that to make reference and seek for external validation of what you use, especially when you use numerical data. So that's what validity has to do. So your work must pass a high degree of validity before it can be considered as a proper research work. So in methodology, there's a subheading called research validity. You explain how your research work has passed this research validity. Is it by content? Is it by construct? Is it by internal? Is it by external? You must explain how. The reader must read it and see that this has actually passed. And if need be, attach any evidence of how these things has passed all these checks. Then last but not the least under this is reliability. Reliability has to do with consistency and stability. How consistent is your work with what is in existence? It has to do with consistency or stability of measurement of your research instrument. If Chidinma did a research work and that work has to do with probably the range of that work started from 1990 to 2024, for instance, and then another person is doing another work again, and that work is starting from 1990 to 2025. The data of Chidinma from 1990 to 2024 should be the same thing with your own data, irrespective of you, both of you not being in the same place. But you guys are using the same region, the same range of database, or range of coverage. That is the same scope of study, right? The data that you're submitting should be consistent with what others have submitted. If, for instance, 2025 GDP of Chidinma is saying 29.5 billion, The next researcher is saying GDP of 2025 is 30.1 billion. Somebody is lying. That's what it means. Somebody is deceiving the public. So it simply means either somebody is manipulating data or somebody went to go and collect data that does not have a high degree of validity. Your source of data collection is wrong. Probably you went on Google and you type what's the GDP for 2025 and Google will give you something without you going to the appropriate database to extract and download the data and see the ones that have been documented. So your data must be consistent and must be stable. Either you're using primary data or you're using secondary data, it must be consistent and it must be stable. There are many ways in which people can be able to test the degree of reliability of your data. Some of those ways include number one, we call it test, retest reliability. Test, retest reliability is what they use to check that. If you have seen some work, they will see pilot study, pilot analysis carried out. Pilot analysis is an example of test retest. Pilot analysis, people carry out pilot analysis to see the consistency level of your work with what has been existing. We have a percentage of acceptable degree of reliability. Once you carry out a pilot study or a pilot test on a research work and the percentage that you got is higher than the acceptable rate, that work is declined. I'm not going to dive into that because whoever that is going to take what do you call it, other data analysis and whatever that we deal with that. So I'm not going to go into that. Then we have inter-rater reliability. It's still an instrument that you use to examine the degree of reliability. We have external consistency. External consistency is the one I was telling you that if somebody has already done this and somebody is quoting a figure, the figure should align with what you're quoting. I'm not saying you should go and copy the person, but if you actually got your figure in the right channel, in the right database, not the one that Google do. I'm not saying Google does not give accurate answer. Google will give accurate answer, but there is a place where all the data are being stored. Go to that place, download it, attach those places as an evidence in your appendix so that somebody who is doubting, probably the person have seen a different figure with another person and they want to validate, show them a proof of where you got the data. Attach that proof as an appendix. That will give you a waiver of that internal consistency check. So once you can be able to show that your research has a high level of reliability, it reduces possible errors, it improves confidence in the data used, and also it makes findings more dependable and replicable. People can be able to base their decisions on the kind of work you did. But if your degree of reliability is up, when I mean up, it's wrong, it's low, then people run away from your work because your work can be misleading. That's what it means. I think we are almost running out of time, but I will try to see how I could be a bit fast. I could be a bit fast on these areas. I think I saw somebody raising. Chidema, did you see somebody who actually raised his or her hand? I think I saw somebody.
Yeah.
I didn't. Please, if you, okay. Okay.
Yes, I was drawing
Who
your
raised?
mind to the time. I sent you a message, but it seems you missed it. Hello?
I also sent the message. I don't know if you've seen a message. I think you have, Mr. Stanley.
Okay, I just saw the message now.
Great. So not a problem. You can go on,
Okay,
sir.
that's fine. So I will try and finalize things. So the next one we talked about is we have a population of the study. This has to do with the total number of the population you're covering. It could be region, it could be state, it could be locality, right? This has to do with the total number of the total scope of your study. Sometimes you cannot be able to, if you're carrying out a work in Nigeria, for instance, or in Ghana, for instance, you cannot be able to measure the whole population in Ghana. So what do? You bring it down to a sample size. A sample size is a selected number of persons out of the population, right? That sample size helps you to be able to use a manageable size of persons to be able to do your work. Is mainly applicable to when you're using primary data sourcing, right? You try to minimize it. That's what sample size has to do. Then the next one, we have different types of how we are able to reduce your population into a sample size. It brings us into sampling techniques. So we have different types of sampling techniques. We categorize the sampling techniques under two categories: probability sampling and non-probability sampling, right? So we have different simple random, systematic random, stratify random, cluster random. So some of these things, probably at the end of the lesson, I'm going to send you my slide. If you read it, you can be able to understand this. So, but you should be able to explain how you were able to reduce your population to a manageable sample size. And that can only be done when you selected people. How did you select the people? Is it randomly? Is it by a group of people? Is it by, there's different ways, as I said, simple, systematic, stratified, and cluster. Then we have non-probability, convenience. People can do it out of convenience. Okay, I want to use 10 based on, it's going to be convenience for me. It could be based on purposive, right? It could be based on snowball, it could be based on quota. So these are ways you can be able to reduce, but you must always give reason how you are able to reduce your population into a particular number of sample size, right? So moving forward to go into this, the sample size population. So I was just trying to be a bit elaborate on how you can be able to minimize your sample size. Remember, some population dwells more when you're doing primary source of data. And when you're doing primary source of data, remember it's qualitative in nature. And when you're doing qualitative in nature, remember it could be descriptive in nature. So I'm just trying to go back and tell you. So this is another question. Okay, this is questionnaire. So what is questionnaire? Questionnaire is an instrument that you use in collecting data when you're doing primary source of data, right? I told you before that we have two types of, we have three types: open end, close end, and then the mix. The mix is combination of both, right? So open end is the one that you ask questions freely, and then people can give their feedback based on a liked summation pattern. That's why where you see strongly agreed, undecided, disagree, strongly disagree. So people can rate their feedbacks, right? That is open-end question. Close-end question is the one that has to do with yes or no, right? You ask a question. It depends on how you structure the question. If you ask a question, do you think white is the best? Somebody will say yes or no, right? But there's a way you still frame that question. It doesn't end with yes or no. That's what we call open-end question. So, and then I've mentioned that questionnaire is no longer advisable to be done physically by paper. You can do a Google form, you can do Microsoft form questionnaire. So those ones you can distribute them. That's why you can be doing a research work. You are based in Nigeria, but you're doing research work in UK, you're doing research work in US, you're doing research work in any of the European countries. That is possible, especially when you're doing primary data source. That is possible because you're using a digital means of sharing your questionnaire, which is Google Form or Microsoft Office. So we encourage people to learn how to do it. If you don't know how to do it, you can send me a DM. Just send it on that WhatsApp group. I will always probably I will do a video on how you can do it and then share it there. People can play it and see how you can be able to do Google Form questionnaire. That's for that one. Then we'll go into how do you design good questionnaire? So these are bad questions. These are good questions. How do you know what is good question? How do you know what is bad question? Of course, you need to make a language very simple, straightforward, avoid ambiguity, avoid inconsistency, avoid repetition of questions, right? And then avoid intruding in people's privacy while you're asking the question. So this let your question be aligned with your research questions, right? So that you can be able to address each and every one of those research questions, right? This does not in any way concern those who are doing secondary data. Because secondary data, we have numerical data that's already stored, right? Then we'll go into what we'll call, just give me a sec, let me see what is here. So this is a brief summary of questionnaire and what is involved in the questions. And then, so this is how open-end questionnaire is, strongly agreed. So you have a choice to rate it. You can rate strongly agreed to be, but it's always like the strongly agreed is always the highest. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This first one is open-ended. The last one is close-ended. This is how it is. So we try to encourage people to use open-ended where necessary because it gives you a better view of what people think about it instead of. Then we have the one that is not open-ended, that is the mix, because you can use both and then ask people to write, like express your opinion on this. Somebody will just write something and submit it. It's still part of it, right? Then we have interview guide. This is about interview. How do you conduct your interview? What kind of questions do you ask in your interview? So if you read this, you're going to understand it better on that. Sorry, I'm a bit fast because I want to round up. The time is not our friend at the moment. So the next one is data techniques. Yeah, I will go here. So the last but not the least is data analysis technique. Very important, very, very important. This has to do with how you have collected your data. How do you want to analyze your data? What data technique are you going to use? We have descriptive statistics, right? Statistics has to do with using, what do you call it? Mean median mode. You know that frequency, right? Mean median mode, standard deviation, right? Using those things, we'll call it descriptive statistics. So you can use mean median mode and still present it in a chart. It could be line chart, it could be pie chart, it could be histogram, it could be bar chart. That's descriptive statistics. You can use correlation analysis, measure the degree of relationship, as I said before. So we have some, what do you call it? The technique called correlation analysis, right? Something like ANOVA. You can use ANOVA. You can use independent t-test as well to measure the degree of relationship, right? You can use ANOVA. You can use something called t-test, the independent t-test, to measure it. We have regression. Regression is used to measure the degree of effect, impact, relationship, effect, impact, influence, and roles. That's what we use regression to measure. So if you're kind of the research work that has to do with effect on this as against this, impact on this as against this, influence on this as against this, role of this as against this, the best technique you're going to use to analyze your data is regression, right? Independent t-test, we have 3 types of t-tests. We have independent t-tests. We have 2 sample t-tests. We have paired sample t-test. We have 3 sample t-tests, right? All of them, paired t-test is used to do comparative analysis, right? Independent t-test can be used to measure the degree of relationship, right? And then we have ANOVA. As I said, ANOVA is used to measure degree of relationship as well. We have chi-square, right? Chi-square is what they use to measure effect as well, but because of the use of technology now, people prefer to use regression other than using chi-square, but people can still use chi-square. We have thematic analysis is what they use to carry out systematic literature review. We have content analysis. It's still used also to carry out systematic literature review. These are the major systematic literature review data technique that you can use. Either you're doing thematic or you're using content. We have narrative analysis. That is, if you're telling a story, right, you can narrate it in a way that you can make a conclusion, right? Narrative in nature. Then we have frameworks. So these are different types of data techniques that you can use while you're doing your work. As I said, it depends on your nature of objective and what you're investigating on. It determines the one you're going to use. You can't be talking about relationship and you're using regression. You understand? It doesn't make sense unless you have a way of defending yourself. But if you're talking about effects, impact, roles, influence, you can use regression, right? So this is for this particular one. So because of time, I think we are going to call it, we're going to call it a stop here. And I think I have been able to address most of them. But so that is it. I'm sure the next person that's going to take course on next Sunday will have a kind of a lapping study to make when it comes to data analytics. So I hope the person can be able to dive into it as well to broaden it for you guys to understand. So if you have any question, please feel free to ask. We have like 6 more minutes to go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stanley. Thank you. That was such an exhaustive lecture. Thank you so much. Very, very comprehensive. Latsi Raphael has something to say, so let's hear you. If any other person has questions, it's either you raise your hand or you drop it in the comments so that we can take as many as possible and then call it a day. Not really call it a day, but call it a session, because I understand that we have another session right after this. Okay, so Chidima and Latsi, I think I'll take you both, and then that's it for today. So go ahead, Latsi, Raphael, you raised your hand first.
Yeah. Okay, so please, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes,
I hear you.
For the opportunity, Coswell. And I want to start by thanking Mr. Stanley. This is very, very comprehensive and then exhaustive presentation on methodology of research. I just want to ask this question. There are questionnaires as an instrument of collecting data. Can it be used to do a mixed method research? Maybe I intend to use only questionnaire in my mixed method research, such that while sharing the questions via Google form, there is a quantitative aspect of the questions, and then there is also a qualitative on the questionnaire. Is it right? Is it okay for one to use just one questionnaire to carry out a mixed method study? Thank you.
Okay. To answer the question, yes, it can use the questionnaire to justify your mixed method analysis. As you said, that means you're going to use open-ended and as well as closed-ended questions. So that makes it a mixed method instrument.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Latsi. Chidima, go ahead.
Okay, I want to thank Mr. Stanley for this, his presentation. It was well detailed. But my question goes directly to the research designs. I recently took a course on development economics at London School of Economics. And during that online program, I realized that the research, like we were given papers to read, but I noticed that most of those papers were not following the kind of research we do in Nigeria. We're mostly speaking towards RCTs. So I wanted to know, that's random control trials. So I wanted to know that, like random control trials, what kind of research design, like, does it fall under?
All right, so do you want to take the questions one by one, or should we ask everything at once?
I think they should ask everything at once so that I can respond to them based on the
Okay,
time.
so Sandra, go ahead and ask your question. Thank you, Chidima. Please just ask. Okay, that's it. Okay. Yeah. So Sandra, the floor is yours. Sandra?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, I want to ask a question based on sampling size. Please, like if I'm working on, maybe I'm carrying out a research on 7 states, and then I just want to select maybe just 2 states for my work. How will I know the best sampling size to use for the research? So I want like deeper explanation of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. So I believe that right after Sandra, we don't have any more questions again, because after he answers this question, we're not going to take any more questions. So let me give you people 1 minute. Let me do one announcement while waiting for any other questions, because once I hand the mic to him, that's the end of questions for today. Okay, so well done, guys. I believe that we have another class later today, so please do well to be prepared and ready for that. So Mr. Stanley, please, while answering the question, please don't forget our prize. You promised us a prize. So for those questions, the practice questions you gave earlier, you can just also tell us the answer so that we can get those two, the answer to the question Sandra asked and then the answer to that question. So I think for now, questions are closed. We can't take any more questions again. So over to
Okay, the first question asked by thank you, Chidema. I will show the answers to that question, then they can take record of who got it correct. So quickly to answer Chidema, you asked me what type of research is random control trials, right? That was your question, am I correct?
Yes, that's my question.
Yeah, is most of the people that carry out that kind of research are clinical staff. Clinical staff people carry out that kind of research, and it's categorized as quantitative research. It's quantitative based research. So people that do it more are clinical staff. Then for Sandra, you are asking about what was the question? You said about random sampling techniques, right? If you select, probably you decide to reduce your sample size to a particular number of persons, right? Was that your question?
The particular, the right sample technique to use for your work. Maybe assuming I want to work in 7 different countries, but I know it's not possible. Then maybe I want to reduce it to 2. How will I know the best sample size to use to be able to make it feasible? Something like that.
Yeah, I think that was the one I said I couldn't explain them in details one after the other because of time constraint. So what happened is this: if you need more information about that, I could probably do a draft and send to you. But you can actually reduce the sample size based on either it could be based on convenience, right? It could be based on quota. So there could be so many reasons. In my slide, you could see where I mentioned different type of random sampling techniques that we have.
Sampling.
Yes. And then I couldn't take them one after the other to explain it because of time frame. So I'll still not do that now because of time frame, but I could give you detailed information if you need it after the class.
Okay, sir.
Excuse me, I still have a follow-up question based on the response you gave me.
Thank you.
Okay.
The question I asked was what kind of research design, not approach.
Oh, what kind of research design?
Yes.
Now, as I told you before, it depends on who is writing it. It could come under expo factor. It could come under what do you call it? It could come under expo factor. It could come under experimental. It could be experimental. It could be expo factor. If you have a particular paper that has that, we can read that together, and then I will tell you the particular research design they use. As I told you, there is no particular one that is correct or wrong, but it depends on your motive behind your research and how you can be able to justify the particular one you selected. You understand? So it could be expo factor, it could be experimental.
Okay. Thank you.
It could still be a case study as well. So it depends. All these things, they fall under quantitative.
Okay, thank you.
So the answer to the question. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I also wanted to ask if they could get access to your slides so that for anything that they didn't get or you didn't cover, they're going to get your slides and follow through with that.
Yes, I will share my slide in the WhatsApp group so they can have it. After this class, I will just send it there. They can have access to it.
Thank you so much, Sam.
No worries. Let me get. So the answers to my question. This is the first answer.
Okay. Okay, so I think let me take a screenshot of that so that I can, if you want to share. All right.
Okay, so for the second question, for this question here, this is the answer. And I gave my reasons for them as well, so that you can know that there's always a backup reason for the answers.
Okay.
Do you have any winner?
Yes, but I'm trying to be very sure.
Okay.
So actually, a lot of them got it correctly. So I think the next thing we'll have to check is the person who got it first.
Okay.
So that would be Ginika. Although I don't know if it's okay. Somebody wrote for number 1, cross-sectional, but what we have here is descriptive.
Yeah.
We can let that slide, right? For every other thing, it was right. So Ginika, Mercy.
Do you have any other person that got it correctly that did not use cross-sectional? Ginika could be the first, yes, but check if there's another person that got it correctly.
The next person that got it correctly was Theophilus, and he used descriptive.
So descriptive is there. So I think the winner is Theophilus there, because you can't use a different time. Is it from here? Yeah, here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Theophilus is the winner.
Congratulations, Theophilus.
So Theophilus, you just send me a DM from the group WhatsApp, then I will give you my gift. It's going to be undisclosed. Congratulations.
Thank you so
So,
much, sir. Thank you.
no worries.
All
I think
right.
I need to end the recording now, right?
Yes. All right. So even we're closing now so that you guys can take your break and